Harriet Martineau's Society in America, 1837, is a seminal work that provides a thorough critique of American society in the early 19th century. Written during her travels through the United States between 1834 and 1836, Martineau's observations offer valuable insights into the country's social, political, and economic structures. She examines the principles upon which America was founded: liberty, equality, and democracy, and compares them with the reality of American life. Her work serves as both a travelogue and a socio-political analysis, highlighting the contradictions between ideals of the American Republic and its practices, especially concerning slavery, women's rights, and the treatment of indigenous peoples. 1. Trot the purpose and approach of Martineau's work. Martineau approached her study of American society with a scientific and philosophical lens. She believed in the influence of empiricism and systematic observation, aiming to analyze how well the U.S. lived up to its democratic principles. Her methodology included interviews, direct observations, and engagement with a wide variety of people, ranging from political leaders to marginalized groups. This approach allowed her to gather diverse perspectives and critique American society from multiple angles. Her goal was not merely to describe, but to evaluate the American experiment in democracy. She was deeply influenced by the works of political philosophers like John Stuart Mill and Alexis de Tocqueville. However, Martineau's feminist and abolitionist perspectives offered a unique and often more critical view than her contemporaries. Trot democracy and political institutions. Martineau had mixed feelings about the democratic institutions in America. On the one hand, she praised the U.S. for its innovative approach to governance, particularly its constitution and the federal system. She admired the country's commitment to the rule of law and its emphasis on civic participation. However, she was critical of the ways in which democracy was practiced, noting the widespread corruption and the influence of wealth on politics. Martineau also pointed out the exclusion of large segments of the population from political participation. While white men enjoyed suffrage, women, African Americans, and indigenous peoples were denied this right. She argued that a truly democratic society could not exist as long as these groups were disenfranchised. 3. Slavery, the great contradiction. One of the most scathing critiques in society in America is Martineau's analysis of slavery. She regarded it as the most glaring contradiction in a nation founded on the principles of freedom and equality. Her observations on the treatment of enslaved people were detailed and empathetic, highlighting the inhumane conditions under which they lived and labored. She condemned the institution of slavery not only for its moral failings, but also for its economic inefficiency and its detrimental impact on American society as a whole. Martineau was particularly critical of the southern states, where slavery was most entrenched. She pointed out the hypocrisy of slaveholders who claimed to value liberty while denying it to others. Additionally, she criticized Northern complicity in the institution, noting that many Northerners benefited economically from the slave trade and the products of slave labor. 4. Women's rights and gender inequality. Martineau's work is also notable for its early feminist critique of American society. She observed that women in the U.S. were systematically denied political, economic, and educational opportunities. Despite the rhetoric of equality, women were relegated to the domestic sphere and excluded from public life. Martineau argued that this inequality was not only unjust but also harmful to society, as it wasted the potential contributions of half the population. She was particularly critical of the institution of marriage, which she described as a form of legal and social subjugation for women. Martineau believed that women should have the right to education, property ownership, and participation in political life. Her advocacy for women's rights was ahead of its time, like laying the groundwork for future feminist movements. 5. Indigenous peoples and cultural erasure. Another significant focus of Martineau's critique was the treatment of indigenous peoples. She documented the systemic displacement and oppression of Native American communities, particularly through policies like the Indian Removal Act. Martineau was appalled by the forced relocation of indigenous peoples, which she saw as a blatant violation of their rights and a betrayal of American principles. She also criticized the cultural erasure that accompanied these policies, noting that indigenous languages, traditions, and ways of life were being systematically destroyed. Martineau argued that the U.S. government's actions toward Native Americans were not only unjust, but also short-sighted, as they undermined the nation's moral authority. Economic inequality and class distinctions. Although the U.S. was often portrayed as a land of opportunity, Martineau observed significant economic inequalities and class distinctions. She noted that wealth was concentrated in the hands of a few, while many people lived in poverty. This disparity was particularly evident in urban areas, where industrialization was leading to the rise of a working class that faced harsh conditions and low wages. Martineau also critiqued the myth of the self-made man, arguing that structural barriers often prevented individuals from rising out of poverty. She believed that the American ideal of upward mobility was more of an aspiration than a reality for many people. 7. Religion and social morality. Martineau devoted a significant portion of her analysis to religion and its role in American society. She observed that religion played a central role in shaping social values and norms. While she admired the religious pluralism in the U.S., she was critical of the moral inconsistencies she observed among religious groups, particularly regarding slavery and social justice. She also noted that religious institutions often reinforced existing social hierarchies and resisted progressive change. Despite this, Martineau believed that religion had the potential to be a force for good if it aligned itself more closely with principles of justice and equality. 8. Education and intellectual development. Martineau was a strong advocate for education, which she saw as essential for the development of both individuals and society. She praised the American public education system for its accessibility and its emphasis on civic responsibility. However, she noted significant disparities in the quality of education between different regions and social classes. She was particularly critical of the limited educational opportunities available to women and African Americans. Martineau argued that a truly democratic society required an educated citizenry, and she called for reforms to make education more inclusive and equitable. Society in America is a powerful and insightful critique of American society during a formative period in its history. Harriet Martineau's analysis highlights the contradictions between the country's democratic ideals and its social realities, particularly regarding slavery, gender inequality, and the treatment of indigenous peoples. Her work remains relevant today as a reminder of the ongoing struggle to create a more just and equitable society. Martineau's observations challenge readers to critically examine their own societies and to work toward realizing the principles of liberty, equality, and democracy. Her contributions to sociology, feminism, and social reform continue to inspire scholars and activists alike, making Society in America a timeless and essential work in the study of social justice and human rights.